This show is brought to you by SalCal Real Estate Connections. Welcome to the Telescope View. We're here with author of the book, The Final Revelation, The Sun Project, co-host Rick Teles, and of course, our favorite Martian, Steve Parker, and yours truly. And tonight's show, believe me, is going to be very interesting, as the subject is going to be, who is your neighbor? And boy, let me tell you, that is going to be a very interesting thing we're going to talk about tonight, Rick.
This is going to get weird, right?
Oh, my neighbor's always been weird.
This is going to get weird.
He lived next to me.
So we know it's going to get weird. So just be prepared. It is, but it isn't.
Yeah.
Okay. I think so. Who is your neighbor? Extraterrestrials among us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for years, rumors have circulated throughout the military.
Yeah.
About classified reports that indicate extraterrestrial forms have visited Earth, and they're still here among us. Okay. And according to the people I spoke to, former military intelligence people, they're true. Mm-hmm. All right? And people are going to say, wait a minute, that can't be. Of course, we've all had that teacher or whatever that we're saying, that could be true.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. Is it possible that they're here and that they live among us? And who are they and what do they look like? Well, more about what do they look like. Who they are, we're still a little unsure about that. But
So they're still here?
they're still here.
Oh, okay.
I mean, once you got here, would you leave, right? Can you imagine the frequent flyer miles, though, if you're coming back?
Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's like the Don Henley song. What is it? They're not here, they're not coming.
They're not here, they're not coming.
There's nothing here that they want to see. Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about them. So if you want to listen to what the aliens might look like, we're going to show you some pictures and who they might be. We'll talk a little bit about that.
I'd like to know who took the pictures of the aliens.
Well, yeah, I don't
Could have
have
been
any,
your neighbor.
I don't have any real pictures. So hey, one of us. I don't know who you guys are, right? Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Well, I think like so many other things, you really don't know. I mean, even you say your neighbors, but think about how many times have you heard that, this person's a space shot, they don't seem like they're from this area, that could be. Has there ever been any kind of reports of somebody that, what if you thought your neighbor was a little bit out there? Who would you talk to?
I don't know.
Would you go to the police? What would you do?
I don't know.
And of course, they're going to think that you're crazy as soon as you say that.
Yeah. So I don't know where you would go on this. Sometimes you say things, though, some people might listen, but you never know. Well, if you go out there and you're into the UFO thing or whatever, you might hear that there's many species of aliens.
Okay.
And that may be true. I mean, the information I had was that there are. However, the aliens that we're dealing with, since 1947, apparently there's been a relationship between the military, the intelligence, and some alien life form. It's an arm's length, what they call an arm's length relationship. It's not like pick up the phone, hey, how you doing? It's not that type of thing. But according to them, they look like us, okay? We have to make this a little more believable, I think, to make people be able to process this, let's push aside that alien of the sci-fi world, the Hollywood.
The Greys are kind of different than what we're talking about here.
Okay, let's start with the Greys. The Greys, first kind of started with Roswell. People said that they saw this alien. It was a small 4 to 5 feet, kind of a spindly thing with a big head. And, for years and years, it was said those were aliens. Well, what I learned is that they were not the aliens. They were codenamed goblins originally. And then finally, they were according to the military, they were identified, they were called biologically engineered entities.
Bees.
Oh, okay.
These were creations. These were robots created by a more advanced civilization, as the same way we would create the Mars rover. We're not going to go there right away. It could be too dangerous. We don't know what these things are. We don't know what the environment is like. So they created these humanoid type creatures. Now, you talk about this in 1980s, 1985, 1970, you'd say, you're nuts. We're doing the same work today. We're creating living material. But what I did is, people hear about the Greys, and you see all kinds of pictures of Greys, and a lot of times they have facial features. Well, the truth is they don't. Okay? They don't.
Well, then why do we, you keep saying Greys. We always heard about little green men. So where did the color green come from?
That's interesting because in Roswell, when they talked to the rancher that found all this, when he left and they had convinced him not to talk about it anymore, he said, I'm not going to say anything else, but let me tell you one thing. They ain't green.
Oh, okay.
Okay? This
Oh boy, look at that gray.
is what I think is one of the best photos of a gray alien. And the thing is, now they have facial features, but the original description of the aliens always said that they had no nose, just a small slit for a mouth, a large head, and large black eyes, okay? Now it's interesting, why would you build something like this? What would make this plausible? Well, we happen to have our little robot friend here. I built this little robot. And notice the shape of him. Why is he in that shape? Because that's what we needed to do to house the electronics that were in there. They wouldn't fit any other way. We have the same thing with this little fella here. See this big head that he has? That's to cushion a brain from gravitational forces.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Large eyes. What kind of lighting are you going to endure? Small mouth, no nose. Well, he's not going to carry food with him. He might have to travel too many distances.
He's not eating.
And they had a very
Awfully
slight
thin.
body. They had a very slight body, which was, again, gravitational forces. You don't know what you're going to encounter. So this is a machine designed for exploration, just like our Mars rover was designed. All right, I think this makes this whole concept a little more plausible. It's just a design, but a far more sophisticated design than what we're currently doing, but we're beginning to do.
But you know something, though. You say a that was designed or developed. When you look at the human body, and we don't really know how all this happened, this could be, they were designed a certain way, in the same way we may have been designed, with the insides and everything the way we are.
And who designed us?
Yeah.
Okay, and that could be a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
There's a scientist we talked about by the name of Paul Davies.
When you think about it, it makes sense, Rick, that this, when you're sending something out in space, you need, you're not looking to sacrifice anybody. And a robot or drone is the way to go.
It's the way to go. And look at the more and more robots that we create are more anthropomorphic.
Yeah.
They look like us. Asimo, you can see him, I think he's made by Honda. He looks just like a person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Pepper. They look more and more like us because we design things in our image because we understand that.
understand.
So to think that they would have done the same thing makes a lot of sense. Okay, so but who are they? What do they really look like? Well, we've had some different things. Now, most people are going to say, and when I spoke to the military, when they were trying to make me understand, closer to what people would call the Nordics. Okay? And this is an example of a Nordic. It was in a book a number of years ago by a guy by the name of Billy Meyer about the Pleiades. But this is what a Nordic would look like. Light-skinned, blonde-haired. This is what an alien. A lot of times people are saying this is what they look like. And what I'm told is this is closer to the truth of what an alien does look like. I'm sorry, they don't have, appendages and gills and things like that. Now, that's not to say that there aren't that type of alien out there, but because according to the classified reports, the ETs that we have been in association with have said there are other aliens out there. Have those aliens been here? Well, apparently incursions occur, but it is a no-no. And the people who we deal with say it's dealt with very swiftly. But this is another type of an alien. Now this is a Nordic. Now I have another photo of a Nordic. Some people say this is their favorite Nordic. But her name was Semjaz, or Semjaz. And this was a report that you heard, but people tried to get the best image of her. She would not apparently allow her photo to be taken. Okay, whatever the story is. But this is what the alien looked like.
Wow.
But where was she where they said you can't take my picture?
This was in Norway or somewhere,
Okay.
but they were saying this. But this is Semjaz. And the thing is, she looks like almost anybody that you might see. The only thing they said was a little different with her, it was the color of her eyes, the blue, very blue eyes. And we've heard that repeated over and over again in different movies, the pale blue eyes of the alien, which is interesting. Why would the movies have that? So the aliens are going to look a lot like us. So what do I think is the best photograph of an alien? The closest, and I don't mean to ruin everybody's night, but maybe this is the best alien right here, Klaatu.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Rennie in The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Okay, and the reason I'm using this one here is because what we're talking about here, when we're talking about aliens, is a race like ourselves that's many, many years advanced from us. We're probably looking at our own future. Someday we will be these people who are doing something somewhere else, and somebody will probably be sitting there, 3 people like us sitting there saying, there are aliens out there, which are now us, and then people are saying, no, that it can't be, therefore it isn't. Okay? So this might be the most interesting alien right here. They're going to look like us. So if you're out there and you're expecting to see somebody walking down the street with gills and stuff, it's probably not the case. Now, interesting story about the movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. I don't know if you've heard it. You can look it up. the whole conspiracy about the UFOs and the day the Earth stood still, Daryl Zanuck, his background, who he was involved. But the story goes that there was a report, and I never heard this myself, but an Air Force officer once said that movie was produced to kind of desensitize people to the concept that these people could actually exist. And Zanuck was involved in propaganda films all the time during the World War II. He also said when they started to make this movie, for some reason, this was an odd quote, a good propaganda film also needs to be entertaining.
Oh.
Now, why would he say this about this film? You get the same thing with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Did Spielberg know something? When he suggested that those were drones flying around, did he know something? Were these projects done to desensitize me? It's funny. I've been accused of the same thing. How do we know who you really are? How do we know you're not working for the government? How do we know the purpose of the book isn't to desensitize people? Because actually your book isn't like way far out. Yeah, it's odd in that it talks about aliens and life forms that they've been here, but it seems to be more middle of the road in that they're like us, don't be concerned about them. Well, in some cases you need to be concerned. So I've heard the same thing, but that's what we're talking about. So as we go through this and we discuss this a little bit more, don't sit there and think we're talking about some wild thing. Yeah, it's wild enough, but let's not, get totally crazy.
The question I have, Rick, are we talking a lot of these things? Or what kind of numbers are we talking?
According to the people that I spoke with, they weren't sure. They said there is a population of these aliens specially trained, just like we'd specially train an astronaut, that reside here on Earth. Okay? And along with them, this was the interesting thing, there is what they call biologically engineered human facsimiles.
Mutts.
They call them mutts. Yes, they get the code name mutts. Just like we are creating things today, the DARPA's Engineered Living Materials Project, we're creating robots and we're creating nanorobots. Yeah, they're facsimiles, but again, they can do the job instead of putting, like we don't want to put a pilot in harm's way if we don't have to, so we're creating robots that can fly aircraft. These mutts apparently exist. Now, the interesting thing is, when they talk, they're virtually indistinguishable from human beings, so are pretty much the aliens, unless you can really medically see them. What are they doing? Well, according to the people I spoke with, they work in the medical, engineering, and social sciences.
Okay.
Put them in a good position to study us, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and you never know. Okay, the next question is, well, if they're that far advanced, why don't they help us with some of the medical stuff? Mm-hmm. We've said before,
they won't interfere.
They will not do that. They will give us concepts, and they will tell us a little bit about it, but they want us to do it. I'm going to say something that might pique some interest. It's part of the experiment. Okay, so to give the experiment the answers doesn't make it work, and we can talk about that a little later. So these mutts are out there now, virtually indistinguishable from human beings, and they really have never been discovered, except 2 were discovered by accident.
By accident.
Literally by accident. Now, this is, again, information that was provided by me. There's supposedly a classified report. In 1978, 2 of these so-called mutts were involved in a motor vehicle accident. Apparently, they can't drive. They were near, curiously enough, the Skunk Works in California.
You're talking about high level.
Okay.
What? No. What's the Skunk Works?
Okay, the Skunk Works is where they develop all these, where Lockheed develops all these fancy aircraft, like the U-2, like the SR-71, TR-3, TR-3B.
Not your everyday kind of thing.
Not something you're probably going to ride on.
Very specialized.
When you go to Disney World, you're not going to fly on one of these aircraft.
That's right.
Okay, that type of thing.
So the accident was supposedly near that area?
Yeah, so they were taken to the hospital. And when they got to the hospital, and they started working on them, working in the hospital was a former Air Force officer and flight surgeon. Now, how he knew anything about these, I'm not sure. I was asked that question. I never asked these guys that. But he took a look when they started to do something, and he said, wait, we've got to stop. And they said, why? And he said, do kind of what you're doing. But he went out and made a phone call, and within literally minutes, the FBI arrived at the hospital, and they stopped everything. And I guess they died. They stopped everything that was going on, They told the staff not to discuss anything that they saw here or anything that happened. And the staff said, why? What's going on? And the FBI gave them a very good explanation. These people that you're working on were involved in espionage. It's a national security. We're taking them away.
Wow.
And that's they ever heard about him. And according to these officers I spoke to, and they had spoken to some of these medical people, they said the medical people didn't really buy into it. Apparently they had seen something or
they saw something.
and not that they looked different or whatever. We were talking about that. Maybe they looked like they didn't have any age on them. But they pretty much said we weren't going to talk about it. That's it. We're just not going to talk about any of this ever again. So. And
if somebody were to come forward and say, I am, we would just think they're nuts anyways,
right.
And we would put them, lock them up or something.
And their people would probably take them away anyway, saying you're not supposed to do that.
Rick, I have to tell you though, talking about this, we're talking here. I mean, it's kind of strange that they even say these things, that something like this could actually be happening.
It is. And like I said, years ago, I would have felt a little funny. I don't anymore. Now that I see we talked, and we have 20 different projects going on by the government today, support everything that we're saying here, engineered living materials, where they're creating desks that are alive. Sure. We're doing we're doing all this stuff.
What are the 3D copies or whatever they're making?
They're making scanning organs out of 3D printers.
Right.
Yes. It sounds funny, but here's the thing. Everything is impossible until it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay? Everything is impossible until it isn't. People are going to say, oh, well, okay. Copernicus and Galileo. Let's go all the way back there. 15th century, 17th century. When Copernicus said, wait a minute, I got an idea. All right? I don't think the Earth is the center of the universe or the solar system. And of course, and sometimes they meant that, though, philosophically. I think all the planets rotate around the sun. It can't be.
It can't be.
Therefore, it isn't. He was right. That redefined people's realities. Then we come to the 19th century, and we get this guy by the name of Dr. Semmelweis, and he said something really ridiculous. That when people get sick, it's not because the body breaks down, it's because there are microorganisms. Can't be. It's impossible. Well, is it? No. We know that's the basic of even how we heal today. So there's another time when science had to flip, had to redefine the reality. Then, of course, we get into the 20th century. All right? And once again, we're going to say things that couldn't be, were impossible, aren't. Television. How can it be possible that you can, you can transmit a picture through the air? Yep. Impossible. Flight, can't happen. So television, flight, electricity, stealth. Antibiotics, all this stuff was impossible, cannot be. All right, and people would argue, and if you said it, you'd be put away. Now we get to the 21st century, and what do we have? Living materials. We're building stuff out of DNA. We find that prime numbers now aren't random like we believed all the time. We find out gravity, Newton's theory of gravity is wrong. Okay, it's not. It's not wrong. It's half wrong. In the Newtonian theory of gravity, gravity is a field, constant. Now we learned just within the last 2 years that Einstein was correct. Gravity is also a wave that travels through space. That blew our physics apart. And then of course we talked about, once before, the basic physics model. Recent project in Antarctica called ALICE by NASA found neutrinos, fast-moving particles.
What's ALICE?
I can't remember what it stands for. Antarctic. I can't remember.
It's called ALICE.
Okay. ALICE. Mm-hmm. We found these fast-moving particles, normally only in space, are now exiting the Earth, and that can't be. Because if it happens, that means our basic physics model is wrong. Mm-hmm. But it's happening. So now they're trying to figure out how does that fit with our basic physics. So when you sit there and say it can't be, therefore it isn't, I'm going to look to anybody who questions me, I'm going to say, why? And they're going to say, and I'm going to say, because that's what you were taught. And they're going to say, yes. And I'm going to say, but you were also taught this, and now we know that's wrong. So is it possible that there are people out there that know more than we do, and that our science is a little anemic, and it can't yet comprehend all this. And I think that's very true.
I think isn't there the possibility that there are some people here, or good numbers of people, that are aliens and they don't know they're aliens? I mean, when you look at
Star children. Star children.
Well, no,
they call them star children.
When you go to, I was down at Yale for graduation, not for me, but you're looking at the fact that people going through there 2 or 3 degrees. Some of the doctors I know at the hospital, you have one guy I met, he became a pilot, did all this stuff, could fly anything, stealth, did it all. And he came back, he says, I think I'll be a heart surgeon. There's just some people that have got such a way of being able to
People
learn.
know things, they don't know how they know it.
Right.
You say it to them and they say, oh, that makes sense. There was one thing they said to me, and they looked at me funny, because these guys are talking. They said something. I said, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me. And they looked at me and go, well, how do you know?
Yeah,
I said, I don't know. That just makes, I understand exactly what you're saying there. And I said it back to him. He goes, yeah, you got it. I don't know. You don't know how people know things. And they talk about the star children, and these are kids that they're born like normal,
okay.
And they seem to know things. They seem to adapt to things. Like they look up in the sky and they know something, or they say something. You say, well, how did you know that? And they just did. And I've talked to people who say, I don't know how I know these things. I just do.
There's savants that know numbers, that know.
They talk about hybrids. Yeah, I don't know about
They're
that.
like
but
visionaries, you know.
Now the interesting thing is on all this is, we talk about the term nomads, which is what the real aliens were nicknamed, or a code name. During the Reagan era, what happened is all references to nomads, all files about this were cleaned out and put somewhere else. They were given to this group called Flight 9, and they changed the name to mannequins.
Mannequins, yeah.
So now the code name was mannequin. Now the interesting thing about all these files, they're not in the National Archives, they're not in normal military databases. There's a couple of military databases, I can give you the name, which I'm not remembering right now, that you would go to. They're not there, they're somewhere else. And the only people who have access to this is this group called Flight 9.
Flight 9.
And there's no way you can do a search to find this information. Only Flight 9 is gonna know about it. They're an Air Force group. So it's interesting that they would do that. Now you say, okay, you're still crazy. And I accept that. I accept that people.
I'm still crazy. I accept that.
I accept that people cannot deal with some of this. I do understand that. But I've also dealt with people where they argue with me, but I can see it's going through their head and they're thinking. And I spoke to somebody, and I mentioned once before, but I did a presentation last week to a UFO group, and a man came up to me afterwards, and I talked about a lot of this stuff, and I talked about the science that we're using. I talked about hydrostatic equilibrium, why things are round, pressures and things. And he was a cynic, and he came up to me, he goes, I was a cynic. He goes, I was a cynic. And he goes, what you said today made a lot of sense when you connected it to the science. He goes, because now we're looking at something that's kind of level set. Let me say one thing is, I'm always going to say something. I'm with some of these military people, and I did projects, and they knew I was always going to say something I probably shouldn't. But that's okay. I did ask one of them. We were with this group, and I asked a guy who was kind of a friend of mine. I asked him about the existence of mannequin.
Ooh.
He got a little upset. He got a little indignant, and he goes, it doesn't exist. No, never ask me that question again. Okay, all right, I won't. I'm sorry, I won't ask you that question again. I got my answer. And I think he was a very calm, cool, and collected guy. So he reacted that way to give me the story.
So what about when you say things like Flight 9? I mean, what is Flight 9, and do you get people crazy if you bring up Flight 9?
Flight 9 is a group of people. Their job is to interact with this so-called alien race to which we have communication. It's arm's length communication. They talk to us when they want to. It's not like we can call them on the phone.
So if you mention that,
there's no number of people that we don't really know.
There's a thing called a bat phone. They call it the bat phone.
Oh,
it's a technology that they were given. They're not exactly sure how it works, but it works. Okay, here's the deal with this information. Somebody asked me once, why doesn't Men in Black or somebody come after you? Well, first of all, who said they didn't? Not necessarily the Men in Black, but who said somebody didn't come after me? Because I've had some strange things in the 2 years since we've done this. But here's the thing. As long as I can't hand you a piece of physical information, they don't care what I say, okay? And even if I did have it, I'm not saying I do, but even if I did have a classified file, there's no way I'm going to produce that to anybody. So That's the story.
Wow, wow. I'll tell you, Rick.
Mind-blowing.
Boy, you certainly got my attention tonight. And as usual, time is flying, and we're going to have to call it a day today. And boy, let me tell you, I can't wait to talk after the show.
Stuff that we don't talk about here. It's amazing.
It's been just so fascinating to me. Believe me. I want to remind everybody, please email us at theviewshow@aol.com. We certainly want to hear from you, and we look forward to answering any questions. And I want to thank everybody tonight for being here. It's been just another absolutely wonderful experience. Thank you and good night.